This episode is brought to you by the NBA. From the squeak of shoes on the hardwood to the tips of their fingers, it's a mesmerizing dance of jaw-dropping dunks, heartbreaking blocks, and mind-blowing steals. It's the most fantastic athletes in the world who make your heart beat out of your chest and make you want to jump into the screen and be right on the court with them. That's the NBA. That's game. Don't miss the NBA playoffs going on now.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugatz Podcast.
He's got a new book, How to Survive America. It's available today. You can get it now. The book confronts racism, the unjust impact of health and well-being, and the safety of blacks and minorities. And this guy has been a funny voice and a great voice across many decades of comedy. And that's a small club, the people who do what he does, where you get into your most vulnerable state. They say this all the time, right, DL? The stand-up comedy is the hardest thing, right? There is not. Is there a harder thing in entertainment?
Well, you know, everybody's going to be all vain and say, I mean, you would say radio is the hardest, but I think for me, there is no, you're very low. Everything you do is your fault. Everything that you do is good is attributable to you. So I think, to me, it's the greatest endeavor, the greatest form of artistic expression that ever existed. To me. Now, I'm sure other people might have their estimation of that, but I just think a man, his thoughts, or a woman and her thoughts in a microphone is just, I don't think there's ever going to be unequal to that.
And when you were coming up in this business, when did you realize, yes, I can make a career of this? Because that's also scary. It's not like there's healthcare and safety nets everywhere on this.
And I got married very young, and I was married and having to take care. Like right away, she started getting pregnant. Who knew? Like, Jesus, what are you, a rabbit? But she started getting pregnant right away, and I was working at the LA Times doing comedy. And then one day I just couldn't do it anymore. And so we just took a leap of faith and started doing comedy, and it took off slowly, but eventually worked out.
And what were the challenges like? Because I can't imagine what was the hardest thing trying to make a career of this.
Well, the hardest thing was this was pre-Def Jam. So a lot of the people who own the venues hadn't heard of a lot of the comedians. So we were big in the urban space, but not necessarily. And a matter of fact, the first time I played any venue like a Comedy Zone or Improv was in 1998. And I've been doing comedy a number of years, and it was after Def Jam and the Hughleys was on. So, and then they gave me a door deal. But I just think making the ability to have people take you seriously in terms of being able to sell tickets and draw an audience was the biggest challenge.
This wasn't the 60s. This is the late 90s. How hard was it? How hard was it for black artists to cross over mainstream? When you say we had a big urban audience, but this is this is pre-internet, so pre-urban. Good urban.
It's pre. And it was very funny because I remember I was in Cleveland and they charged the ticket price, and I got 90% of the door because they wouldn't give you like a deal. They would just say, "Hey, we'll give you a door deal." And so we sold out like 10 shows, and I was in there counting my money. I'm like, we should do this again. But even then, it was urban audiences that came to those venues. And after a while, what I started to notice is kind of the broader my experiences and the broader my, the more experiences I have, the more expansive my experiences were, the broader an audience started to be. And I just, so it was just based on the kinds of experiences I was having. Because I grew up on 135th and Avalon, and that was a very narrow prism to view things. But as you develop and start experiencing more things, audiences got broader and more opportunities came along.
What an amazing prism, though. It's over decades of comedy, over decades of race relations in this country, over decades of being a black man trying to find the funny and the spaces in comedy. So you arrive now, a wizened veteran of what's funny. Funny comes from pain. I can't even imagine what watching America the last 18 months has been like for you as someone who's a guest on Bill Maher and isn't afraid to tackle some of the more difficult topics.
It seemed familiar to me. It did. It seemed, I think that America has to reconcile because, I think that America has to reconcile if it's what's on the brochure or it's like going to Priceline and going to a great hotel room and find out it's fucked up. That's kind of what America's going through right now. But to me, it seemed familiar. I think that there were all the things, all the pretext was stripped away, and we just kind of got a real unvarnished look at who we were. And I don't think for Black people it was really that much of an awakening. I think that those things, like, it's funny because every couple of weeks a video come out of somebody doing something insanely brutal to Black people on a video, but it'll be from 3 years ago, and then we go, we can't believe it happens. Like, even the statues that we build, to get a statue in America, you have to have done something horrible to Black people. Like, there are way more statues to Robert E. Lee than there ever will be to Jesus. And you're like, even right now, people want to stop teaching about the Civil War, but keep the monument to the men who perpetrated. So I think that there's always these dualities, and those things inherently are just funny.
The thing that I kept saying to people during the insurrection in terms of chickens coming home to roost, through Malcolm X, through all that stuff, is Black people had to be watching that and saying, if this were Black Lives Matter storming this Capitol, these Black bodies would be stacked up on top of each other like fire logs, dead.
Well, you know what's funny,
dead in front of the Capitol.
I think that a lot of people took the tack that, you know, there was a kinship between the insurrectionists and the police force, and I think that there's undoubtedly some of that's true. But I really think that those men and women felt like their lives were in danger. Like, if you hear any of the interviews, they were talking about, if we shot, they would, like, they really felt. So we got to, in addition to, we got to see what an insurrection looks like, which no one, you know, for us it's a riot, but it was an insurrection. But in addition to that, we got to see what real how law enforcement really act when they really feel like their life's in jeopardy. Like, they were very judicious, they were very cautious, and I think we got an example of what, you know, you should use that kind of prudence and kind of measured approach. Like, all of them, like, people were getting beat to death and they didn't shoot in front of them. People were getting pepper sprayed and they didn't shoot, and that wasn't because, you know, they had a kinship with them. They just didn't want to die. They're like, man, these shoot back, and we are outnumbered.
Well, you've said before, right? Yeah, the Black person is rarely the one who's throwing anything at an athlete these days. You're not Black people, because of how America has been to them. There are no Black daredevils, for example. Like, Black people don't go into the woods. I've heard your routine on this. Like, there's certain places that Black people simply don't court danger, and we don't care if you're stereotyping us on this. Is the way that's looked at. Right.
Like, listen, I got to fill out a credit application. What I got to go to the woods for? like it's just, I think that they're inherent things. And I think that this pandemic and us having to reconcile ourselves with all these things that have happened, because we weren't distracted. Like, all the things that generally distract us just didn't exist. And there are only so many great, you couldn't watch sports, you couldn't go to church, it was funny because churches was closed, but bars were open. So you can Zoom Jesus, but not Jack Daniels. Like, we're not a Christian society. We are a Christian Brothers society. Like, it's all the things that we once counted on to have this kind of distractive quality didn't exist, and we had to see ourselves. And I just think, like when people ask me, you know, the name of the book is How to Survive America, but ultimately there was nothing that George Floyd could have done to survive his encounter with Chauvin, because Chauvin was determined to kill him that day. The only thing he could have done is not be in the same proximity, not calling for his dead mother, not calling him sir, not praying, not asking for help, not cooperating. None of that was going to work. And so ultimately, I think that we just have to be in the right places at the right times and out of the wrong ones at the wrong time.
The feeling you felt strongest over this summer, if you had to pick one from among hopeful, depressing, angry, numb, where were you? Because you sound unsurprised. You sound unsurprised to have it seen it laid bare.
I would say righteous indignation, because I remember when I got COVID, and it was funny, I was promoting another book. I got COVID. I passed out on stage. So then I passed out on stage, and they get ready to take me to the hospital. And the ambulance driver started to take me to the urban hospital. But then they realized, oh, this is a famous Black dude. We'll take him. Anything with ours always County General Memorial. Y'all's a saint. So you know you're going to a saint, you're going to get great medical treatment. So I go there and imagine what my outcome may have been had I went somewhere that was less resources. Then I got here and they kicked me out of the hotel. American, Delta, and United wouldn't fly me. I had to get a private jet. They wouldn't fly me. And George Lopez and Don Cheadle and Chris Spencer and Anthony Anderson had to all get on the phone. Instead of me and Ted had to all get on the phone with this private jet company and say, if you either you come get him or we don't use you anymore. So imagine all of that's absent. Imagine all those things are absent. Then we might be having a decidedly different outcome. And I think that is the thing most prevalent. This disease and this pandemic is really no different than what happened in 1930 in the Spanish flu. We died proportionally at the same rate, and it was always our fault. Like almost everything that happens to us, it is always on. Like I think that America has never seen a Black person die, whatever the circumstance, be a pandemic or the hand of a policeman, where they kind of brought that on themselves.
I don't know how to follow that because I don't know how many people know the entire story, right? You were one of the first comedians because, man, we were talking to some depressed comedians during the pandemic who were telling us this might be the death of comedy clubs. Right. This might be sort of the death of comedy itself with cancel culture, of laughter. Right. You were one of the few guys to get out there early, dangerously. Right. It goes disastrously.
It does about as bad as it can go, right?
I mean, you get out there first, and it's not because you're an idiot or because you're desperate for laughs. You're just trying to get back to normal. You're trying to get back to money. And but in everything you just said, that is one hell of a phone call that got that private jet. Jesus Christ. Who did you put on that line to bully a private? That's real Black power you were talking about there, to bully a private jet into we will not.
And they wasn't gonna do like 4 of them like we had got scheduled because we got kicked out of the hotel because I guess they saw it was on the news. They're like, this, that's what we got to get out of the hotel. We have reservations already on American, when I fly. And then they're like, we can't take a COVID patient. And all the other airlines said the same. So we thought we'd try private. They were set and then didn't happen. And then collectively, there's a jet company that we generally use. And they got on the phone with that company and said, look, if you don't fly, we'll never use you again. And then a jet came. But I think, and I remember there was a doctor in Indianapolis, a Black female doctor, and she got COVID. And she knew she was trying to tell him that she needed a therapeutic. And she recorded herself, and they didn't give it to her, and she died. And she knew she was going to. So there was nothing that she could do to avoid that. The only thing she could have done to not avoid that is not be in that circumstance. She was a medical professional. She's a doctor. She knew what was going on. But the way that, even if you look at what happened recently, how Naomi Osaka, she decides for her own mental health that she's not going to play in the French Open. And Piers Morgan says, oh, well, she's just weaponizing. The problem is that there's nothing that Black people say that people believe. Serena Williams has a blood clot. No, she's ill. She can't get treatment because people don't believe her. So I think that seed, it says something about who we are. Either we have done all these things to deserve it, or America has done some incredibly monstrous things.
You're making it very hard for me to transition into the I just want to ask you sort of the TMZ question of who was on that line bullying that private jet company, because TMZ dragged you, and it was this was an uncomfortable moment for you publicly. You weren't trying to do anything bad. You were just trying to get back to laughing, trying to get back to normal. You got dragged. So it took what to get that flight in the air? Who made that call?
It was a combination of George Lopez, said the entertainer, Chris Spencer, Anthony Anderson, and Don Cheadle. They're like when there's a jet company that we generally just use, and collectively they got on the phone, and the next thing you know, it'll be there in 4 hours, and it was, but they had plastic everywhere, like your mother's couch in the living room. And they had plastic everywhere. I thought I was flying in my mother's den, but it was plastic everywhere. And then when I got home, no car would pick me up, and my wife picked up, the security picked up, the limo company picked up my security. And my dog, I have a Akita that travels with me. So my wife picked up me and the dog, but she had plastic everywhere. It was like being a leper. I was like, I came home and it was like plastic everywhere and everybody was all separate. So it gave me a lot of time to think. And that's actually when I started writing this book, after that process.
And tell me about the process of writing the book. So it's not just all of that. It's this summer. It's somebody who wants to be a comedian with a voice that resonates, that echoes. It's not just all funny. Hey, I've got a unique perspective. Yeah, I've been one of the, because it's a small world you live in. It is small. What is it, 100 stand-up comics? Like you're all friends. I couldn't believe I talked to Bill Burr the other day, and it's the only place I've ever seen him be sensitive, where he looks out for all you guys because it's such a small world.
The most crazy thing is passing out at a so I'm passed out in the hospital. I had passed out. I'm in the hospital, and Chappelle and Leno and Sykes and Chris, like all these people are calling. But the worst thing in the world is to have comedians call you when they know you're not gonna die. Like when they know you all right. It was the most horrible stuff ever. I'm like, man, I was feeling kind of low, and now you guys succeeded, made me feel lower. But it's just, I think it's the way that kind of people process things. But it was because you're away from everything. I haven't not been on the road for 30 years. Not been on the road. Like my wife is like, what are you thinking about? Well, I can call my girlfriend with you around while you're here all the time. There's nothing like I can't. but it really just you have to find another outlet. I did my syndicated radio show from home. I actually did it from the hospital when we got back. So it was. There were just funny has to get out, and I don't think the Zoom thing, the virtual thing, works for us. So I just kind of channeled it into other things.
The calls you were getting in the hospital, who gave it to you best? Like who was
Wanda Sykes? Wanda Sykes, no question. Wanda Sykes. Well, Kevin Hart, then Wanda Sykes. Wanda Sykes said, "I think you passed out because your hat was too tight." And you know what? I haven't worn a hat since then. I'm just saying. I don't think it's true. And then Kevin Hart, he's like he's a horrible man. But he said, you passed out because you old, and you should remember that you old. Like it was just like, and this was like, I was like waiting for test results. Like I was like, what happened? Why not pass out? But I think it's just their way of it's that whole gallows humor thing.
Walk me through some of your relationships here, because one of the things from the outside, I can't know this to be so, but it's in listening to both of them talk. Kevin Hart is hugely popular. He's monetized that game in a way that's overwhelming. He's the most, I got to think, the most financially successful of that group, who's not maybe, Seinfeld. I don't know.
Well, I think maybe of all time, I mean, you have to look at like the Dice Clays and the Eddie Murphy, like when they achieved this just zenith of just profit and money and notoriety. So I think he had to be arguably one of the best at that level, one of the people that's made success on a level that we just have rarely seen. I think Kevin Hart is probably one of the most likable human beings I've ever met. And very just a likable.
And off of that, the question I wanted to ask you is, in interviews, I have gotten the impression, and I say this with, like, I'm trying to say it with nuance. I'm not pitting them against each other, but I've just gotten the impression that Kevin Hart, for all of his success, there's something that is not envious in a poisonous way, but just he wishes he had the freedom that Chappelle has. That Chappelle, I don't mean it as an indictment. I just mean that Chappelle, broke away from Comedy Central. He goes to South Africa. He's like, I don't like this commerce. The part of it that it doesn't seem like people understand that what the show I'm doing is not white people laughing at black people. It's black people laughing at the way white people laugh at black people. And now I'm in a room with Comedy Central, and it's all white executives. They're giving me $15 million. No, I'm out of here. And then he's done it his way the rest of the way. And it doesn't seem like he's got a boss in the world.
Well, what? I don't care who you are. Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player ever left to play baseball. Like, you have rock stars that want to be rock stars, that want to be athletes that want to be rock stars, actors that want to be politicians, and politicians that want to be actors. I think once you've achieved the level of success, you become envious of, like, it's almost like the whole grass is greener thing. But I think there is a freedom in being unafraid to lose that I think, or the thing about Chappelle that I just marvel at is how patient he is. It's like watching wine being made. He's very patient. He doesn't necessarily rush to the point. He enjoys the ride. Like, it's such a vivid experience. I think Kevin Hart is more self-deprecating, and has just a warmer kind. Because if you're talking about yourself, that's and you're talking about your circumstances, it's very insulated. So it's very little chance that people are gonna find that offensive or controversial or anything like that. But Dave's view is so expansive and he's so patient that you can't help but listen. Like I remember movies. You go to this strange place with these people and you watch this thing. But television is such a much more, and radio is so intimate that people have to strain to hear you. Like you have to be invited in. Like you can't get radio. They're not gonna be in your proximity unless I push a button and say, you come on in. And TV the same way. And I think that's how I would equate their kind of views of the world. One is more intimate and one is kind of more expansive.
Before we let you go here, because that's interesting that you see Chappelle, you watch Chappelle as a comic the way somebody would watch Le'Veon Bell as a patient runner, that he's not
right.
That he's just
right.
taking, like nobody does it that patiently. I know your laugh is coming. I'm going to do this the most confident way. There's not going to be any insecurity in my rush.
But I don't think he necessarily has an expectation of a laugh. I don't think that he cares what the result is. I think that he cares that he's sharp in his assessment of it. It's almost like watching like female golfers swing. It almost looks like they're falling asleep doing the swing. Like they're that, Ernie Els, like the way they swing is so lazy, but and it's a thing of beauty to watch when you see somebody who does everything they say you're supposed to do, like from a sports position. You're supposed to be clear. You're supposed to take your time. You're supposed to rely on so all the stuff that you rely on from a sports perspective that makes you quintessentially great is, I think, elementally what those two dudes do, but in their own endeavors.
From your sphere, when I say to you most fearless comic or most confident comic, are those the same person or are those two different things?
No, I think confidence is the definite nail for a comedian. I think if you're confident, I mean, it's almost like if an athlete doesn't have butterflies, he's not ready. And I think confidence, I think the people who fake confidence better than anybody, I think there are people who fake confidence. But the minute you're not afraid to do something, the minute that you're not anxious about doing it, means that you're lazy to me. So I think I've seen probably the most confident human being, or the most outwardly confident, fearless human being I've ever been around comedically is Paul Mooney.
How did you experience his passing recently? Because
I was very sad about it, but I think Paul was a great comedian, but not a warm man. Like he wasn't a warm man. So you're sad that something like that happens. But, it's not I didn't have a warm interaction. I had an appreciation for what he did. And I had, certainly I was sympathetic to his family and his friends, but he was a hard dude to like. He was a hard dude to like, but a hard dude to lose too. So
you are excellent, sir. Thank you for spending this time with us. One more time, if you want to tell the people out the door why it is that you wrote this book and why it is they should pick it up. Thank you for the time, and let's do it again, please, because I find
But I wrote the book because I remember when Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General at the time, got on television and told black people and brown people we got to stop drinking, smoking, and doing drugs. That's basically intimating that we're predisposed to it. But at the time, Europe was locked down. It was raging the world. But here, a government official actually got on TV and told black people, like, it's your fault. Like if you stop drinking, forget that the whole country's addicted to opiates. Forget that everybody was smoking and drinking, that you could get weed delivered to your door. There is a special dispensation for black people. It was why we were at fault for proportionally being at the hands of this virus. And when I saw that, and I had just gone through the process. I just wrote the book, and originally my agent didn't want it, but my publisher asked me to have new ideas, and this is what we came with. And I'm very proud.
Thank you, sir. We will talk again.
Thank you, man. What a pleasure. Take care.
Stugatz here for our friends over at DraftKings. I love DraftKings. I spend all my time there, seriously. I have my mail sent there. I do. People say, hey, what's your address? My address is DraftKings.com. DraftKings Sportsbook is not only my favorite sportsbook, but also America's top-rated sportsbook. I love using DraftKings Sportsbook. It is easy to navigate, has plenty of instructions for new bettors, and nearly limitless ways to get in on all the action. My friends and family have been loving DraftKings Sportsbook, and I know you will too. Listen to this great offer. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you courtside with a chance to turn $1 into $100 in site credits. That's right. Pick any basketball team that is still in contention. Bet $1, and if that team wins, you win $100 in site credits. How about that? DraftKings, man, they're always getting it done for our audience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code Dan when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits. Bet on the basketball team of your choice to win their next game, and if they do, you will claim $100 in free credits. That's promo code Dan for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or, in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
This episode is brought to you by Roundup Ready-to-Use Weed and Grass Killer. It's got the Sure Shot wand, which extends 2 feet to reduce bending over. And its protective shield fits over the weed to help contain the spray. It kills existing weeds to the root so they don't come back. So instead of thinking about weeds, you can think about whatever you want to think about. Like why water from the hose tastes so good. Or how flamingos manage to stand on such skinny little legs. Or why Wednesday is spelled Wednesday, but pronounced Wednesday. Or which committee of fashion experts decided that socks and sandals weren't cool. And why you weren't notified of their decision until it was too late. There's just so much to think about. The Roundup brand. Think about what you could think about when you're not thinking about weeds. Always read and follow pesticide label directions.
I have a couple of basketball stories that I want to get to.
Okay.
A report out of Portland that there have been internal discussions there about Eric Spoelstra, going after Eric Spoelstra as their coach. And also the Nets have an interesting game tonight. Kevin Durant hasn't been this kind of vulnerable in a long time. He hasn't, not since OKC has he been quite this exposed without protection.
And we just got the lamest upgrade in the history of upgrades. James Harden was out, and now he is doubtful.
I am fascinated. What are you going to get from Durant tonight when the circumstances all of a sudden call for, in the middle of peril, hey, Durant, you don't have very much support right now. You've been at the forefront for a long time, for a decade now, of the way the sport has mutated so that you were at the front and center of the hood ornament on Team Troll, and now you've lost both trolls.
Right.
Both the other trolls.
But that's also an opportunity for Kevin Durant.
Correct.
To shut people up and say, hey, you know what? They're both out.
It's been a long time. It's been
a
long time since he had the opportunity that way.
Right.
Where he doesn't even have a Westbrook. It's been a long time since he was this exposed. But we have to go first. We have to wrap this up here. Erlene Cody, the strongest and the best of the Codys by far, joins us now from atop the legal world where we ask her questions about her weirdo husband. First of all, what can you tell me about the initials QK? We need to understand why it is that your husband just will say QK in your house.
You don't know? I thought everyone used that. No? Yeah, you mean the quick crap. Yeah, that's his signal.
Is it ever quick?
Okay, and I don't think I want to keep asking follow-ups in this particular realm, but where does it rank in terms of your husband's weirdnesses for him to refer to the quick crap as a QK?
Isn't it just sort of in keeping? I mean, I don't think it's probably in the middle somewhere at worst. You know, it's not that. It doesn't infuriate me, so it's fine.
She shrugs it off.
What is the thing that he does more than any other that would be the highest of the pet peeves when it comes to infuriating you?
You know, that's I think it's just his unwillingness. I mean, it's his unwillingness, his stubbornness or whatever. Like, this is a really dumb example, and it's probably not that funny unless you're living it, but like we were watching TV, there was an Arby's commercial on, and I said, and his brother was there. I said, we don't have any Arby's by us. He goes, yes, we do. It's right down the street. I'm like, that's not an Arby's. That hasn't been an Arby's in 10 years. And he's like, I say, it's a Chipotle. He goes, if you say so.
Oh,
like,
yeah, that one. Yes,
so.
yes.
Yeah.
It's you can't win the argument against of if you say so.
Oh, so this is better. The next day, we're freaking driving down the street, and we were driving by, and I went, hey, look. There's the Chipotle. And he goes, if you say so.
Oh,
he wouldn't even look.
Way to stay entrenched, Greg.
Thank you.
How did you feel about the monument that Greg made for your beloved Riley, who recently passed?
You mean the hanging tennis ball?
Yep, that one.
Well, take
That's
us
one way to
through.
put it.
Take us through your discovery, just the whole thing. Are you looking? I'm gazing out through the kitchen, and you just see a hovering tennis ball.
No. He had to bring it to my attention since it really didn't really stand out, I would say.
Of course.
So wait.
Tennis ball.
So he comes to you and says, "What do you think that is?" Or he tries to get you to figure out the symbolism of the tennis ball
Well,
hanging
he had
from
told
the
me
tree.
he had found a ball in the backyard that he thinks was the last official ball. And so that was a couple days earlier. And then I think he was waiting for me to notice it, even though it was way far out of the way. And then he's like, see that out there? And I'm like, what? And he goes, you see the ball? And I'm like, where? I finally see it. And I'm like, okay. That's when I just got to go, okay. It's better not to comment additionally on
You
top
could
of
have
that.
complimented the
He was proud of
emotional
himself.
gesture.
Right, he was proud.
There was also an accusation that it was Greg's dog.
Yeah, well, he did do that.
It was Greg's
Oh,
dog.
Yes, he said that was my dog. If we were being honest, because
Really?
and he said it with tears.
Well, Greg was definitely in the top 4 people that she loved the most.
Well, Greg also said that letting Riley pass may have been a financial decision.
Oh my
I did
God.
not say that.
He saved money. He did.
He did
Well,
say
we
the
did
same.
save money.
He is a guy that's always looking to save money.
Right.
He gets mad at us if we order an extra pizza, right? The other night we went to have dinner,
So annoying.
right? Christopher can tell you this. He gets so upset if we're going to pay an extra $14 to have an extra pizza.
And it's the same conversation every single time we go to this restaurant. We have like
Every
eight
single time.
people with
It's the
us.
cheapest place in the world.
So we're like, let's get 3 pies. We want 3 different kinds. No big. And he's just always like, too much food.
In Greg's defense, though, is there ever too much pizza? I mean, because that's
that was
annoying.
like the one and only time ever. And when we eat it all,
That's not in
he never
Greg's
says a word.
defense.
He never, like,
Stugatz doesn't understand how to defend Greg.
Waste not, want not, right, Greg?
Exactly.
How is that in Greg's defense, Stugatz? How have you had such trouble with math today?
I mean, you order so much food, Dan. It's annoying, right? You're spending too much money. The food's not going to be eaten. No one likes leftovers. I understand where
You
Greg's
just
coming
said
from.
there's no such thing as too much pizza. You lying rat, think,
Little
asshole.
za.
Yeah, little za. There it is. There he farts out a little something. Little za, give me $1 million.
I want to set the record straight. Because I am maligned as a cheapskate. It's not about spending an extra $20 on another pizza. It's that you, frankly, have a habit of over-ordering and thinking in terms of, well, we want leftovers, or what am I going to bring to lunch tomorrow? I don't believe in that. I believe in ordering just what you're going to eat at the table.
Your son announced, let's order extra because I want leftovers from here.
Well,
he
that's-
asked for extra.
I'm again it.
And then on Sunday, it's like, if we don't have leftovers for Christy to have leftover lunch, she's not happy the next day. So we make her happy.
Well,
so that's what we do.
She's happy if I don't make shrimp.
If you say so, is what I thought he was going to say.
Well,
If you say so. That is so, that if you say so, makes my skin crawl.
Tread lightly. She's a lawyer, Greg. She'll clean
Don't
you
I
out.
know it, Roy?
Erlene, if you would, I would love for 5 things, not right now, but just if you could put together a list, 5 things your husband does that make your skin crawl, and 5 weirdest things about your husband. It doesn't have to be right now, but I'd like to come back to you at a future date and get those lists if you don't mind.
Because I got nothing else going on right now.
Unless you have them right now off the top of your head.
Does calling farts pets rank in the top 5 weirdest things?
It's absurd, and he's upset that the rest of us don't do that.
It's a kind, gentle word compared to fart. Who can deny that?
All right, Erlene, we'll check back in
All
with
right.
you. Thank you. Good talking to
Bye.
you. Who can deny that? Put it on the poll, Guillermo. Is pet a kind, gentle word for fart? Who can deny that? At LeBatard Show. I think the Portland job is the only one that if you told me what might tempt Spoelstra out of here, just because I don't totally know what his links are emotionally to Portland. I don't know what his attachments are or his wife's attachments are to Miami or where they want to raise a new family and kids. But Portland has been a place that has called him as someone who went to college there. And so I don't have any specifics here beyond knowing that he speaks of Portland fondly.
His father worked for the Blazers, I believed. So he has like connections that might have even grown up around that organization. So like he has real and legitimate connections to Portland, which is why like this czar of basketball plus head coach would seemingly be appealing to him.
It's something he can't be here. He's the videographer who came up through the system, and the organization is Riley's until it's not.
But it would be his after Riley leaves, right? Like, is it worth waiting around for?
I don't know if Riley's going to ever leave because he's been here for a long time. I don't know what the pull of this. Again, I have not talked to anybody, so I'm just speaking strictly of I've heard him talk emotionally about Portland. I've never heard him talk that way about another city. And so that's the only link to it, because it's right now it's just Portland's interested. It makes sense that Portland would be interested. I would think Miami would be a hell of a lot more interested in getting disgruntled Lillard here than losing their coach to there. But I also do understand in this organization that's made up of lifers and loyalists, you either ride with Riley or you're excommunicated. Like this organization is filled with people who have been here like Eric Spoelstra since he was a videographer. I would understand a young father at a different time in his life saying, you know what, I'd like to be in charge of my own thing. I'd like to make a go of it. Now, there are dangers in that, right? Fizdale learned it the hard way. There are dangers in...
Stan learned it the hard way.
Well, but he's gotten chance after chance after chance at least. Juwan Howard made a decision coming up through this pipeline to go home. Portland represents home, does it not, for Eric Spoelstra? He went to college there, and he was there briefly, correct? He tried to play basketball there.
Yes. Yeah, but what Stan went through, Stan was a coach, and then he got control of everything in Detroit, and that didn't go well, right, for Stan. So that's a different animal. I wouldn't leave Riley. Like, Riley's the guy that gets LeBron. He gets Chris Bosh. He gets Jimmy Butler. He gets you to the NBA Finals. I wouldn't leave Riley if I were him, certainly not for Portland.
But Stan has burnished his reputation to the point where the Detroit thing did not work out in a spectacular way, and he still got the Pelicans job because he's got a reputation. And I think Eric Spoelstra has now kind of become like the coach's coach. Like we talked earlier about comedian. Like I think Eric Spoelstra now is the coach's coach, where everyone says, no matter what, Eric Spoelstra's getting the most out of any team that he has. So, I mean, in some ways, he doesn't have to prove that somewhere else. He's got that reputation already. But in terms of getting your own thing, like, the heat is always bigger than any one individual except for Pat Riley.
I'm looking at that job and saying, okay, if something is going to tempt him, that's what it would look like. You've got a star, it's a city that he likes, and you get an upgrade in your power. You become somebody who he does not run this organization. He is one of a handful of voices.
But he has to know that star is going to stay there long term, right? Because there have been rumors that the star might not be happy there anymore. So you have to know that.
I don't think you have to know that, actually, because he's got 3 years either way if it's the calling from home, and what Whittingham just said is true. He's not going to ruin himself. This will be his second job, and there will be a third for Eric Spoelstra if he wishes to continue down that path and there's a failure there.
Well, what is Spo's appetite to have more power? That's the essential question.
What's the appetite to be out from under the parental organization that you've been under for 20 years because you'd like to try something new because Riley and Harrison have been in charge for a long time and you just want to try something new? Again, I'm just throwing out hypotheticals. I will say it again. I don't know anything here, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's smart of Portland. That's what I would be doing if I were Portland. See if I could tempt him with more power, more money. Hey, do you want to get out from under all that? Do you want to be somebody who carves his own path? What's your family life story? Would you prefer, there are shootings all over Miami these days. Would you prefer Portland?
That's the temptation. I think the power factors into it, but eventually he'll have power somewhere if he wants that.
He's an older father.
Going home is the temptation.
He's an older father raising a new family and having found the perspective that he's been lopsided for a long time in basketball, arriving at a level of success. He can choose his own thing. He can have something that more resembles adult balance in his life. If he's capable of it as a coach, because they become lopsided and becomes all about the coaching. But I don't know how much I've heard him speak of how much the perspective has changed with the kids. Would you rather raise young kids in Portland or Miami right now? Because I don't know the answer to that for him, but I would think that that would be a governing force for him, whatever that is.
I would think if you're Pat Riley, one of the ways you keep Spo is to tell him in private, I'm going to give this 3 more years. You're still a young man. You're still in your 40s, mid-40s, I think. Stick it out here. We're going to make it worth your while.
You can't bank on that, though. I mean, Riley telling you that, and then 2.5 years from now, Riley's like, "Hey,
he's going to be a skeleton in that throne with perfectly groomed hair.
Yeah,
he's going to stay there forever, talking the entire time about how he's thinking about his beach houses in Malibu."
Would it stun? Because Greg was just trying to guess what Spoelstra's age is. Would it stun you that he's 50 years old?
Is he?
He does not look like a 50-year-old man. That dude ages brilliantly.
I thought he was like 45, 47.
He told you during Freedom that he's never going to retire. If you were listening to him, it was like, I'm not retiring. And his wife will tell you he's been talking about this for 15 years. And
about a house he's never going to get to.
I mean, he gets there. He gets there more than he ever has. And he has ceded more power to Spoelstra than Spoelstra has ever had. But it's still working under Riley. And Riley's older now. And Spoelstra's heard all the things. Like, at this point, I'm not kidding you, Stugotz. What do you think about this? You and I looked up one day and realized, oh, wait a minute. We were sort of professional parents for the shipping container. That's Spoelstra and Riley. That's Spoelstra and the Arison family. Like, he came up he doesn't know anything else other than working in that environment from the very bottom. All the Arisons, or I shouldn't say all, both Arisons have done this. Mickey Arison got this from Ted Arison. Work every job in Carnival Cruise Lines from the very bottom of the job. Work all the jobs. He did the same thing with Nick Arison. Nick, you're going to be ball boy, and you're going to help recruit Shane Battier and everyone else, but you're going to start as ball boy, and you're going to crawl up the organization, and you're going to do all the jobs. Eric Spoelstra was a kid who knew nothing, working 20-hour days at the bottom of the ship, where no one goes, cutting video splicing. Riley raised that dude. Mm-hmm. I don't know if at this point in his career with kids and a family, Spoelstra's like, I don't need to be raised anymore. Like, I don't need to be the son for this organization.
I want to raise someone, right?
I'm going to go and create my own thing. I just understand why it would be tempting. And this is just coming from one side. This is just Portland interested. It's not like Spoelstra has said anything to entertain what it is that I'm talking about here.
He's also about to enter his 14th season as head coach of the Miami Heat. And you wonder, I mean, they talk about coaching cycles being 5 to 7 years. He's in some ways on borrowed time in terms of his team tuning him out. Now, it has not happened at any point. Eric Spoelstra still gets the most out of his team, but you wonder if like a coach has any self-awareness to recognize they might be getting sick of
it. They always turn the team over.
So much turnover that none of the guys are there long enough to get sick of it.
You don't think Udonis has him, though? It's like in the back of the room rolling his eyes, talking about process?
I think all of them are sick. To whatever degree they're sick of Eric Spoelstra, they're also sick of Udonis Haslem. Because they've both been there.
This guy get out of here already?
Udonis has been there as long as Spoelstra has been there. What are your thoughts here, Cody, as a lifelong observer of the Miami Heat since they were formed in 1988?
I think Spoelstra has a great situation here, and I don't assume that he's antsy to try something else. I think he's got such a stature. I think he's Popovich. I think he has such a reputation, a favorable reputation in this league, that he has the respect of players, and I think he's a great coach. They need to do everything they can to keep him, would be my mindset. And I just don't assume that he's antsy for more power. I don't assume that.
Dan, does he have this job for as long as he wants this job, Eric Spoelstra? For as long as he wants it?
No.
No?
I mean, you have to.
I thought that's part of Heat lifer, Heat family. Riley taught me, like, I'm going to stay here as long as I want to stay here. I have job security here is what I'm asking.
I don't think there is such a thing in that sport. Like, I guess Popovich has job security, but let him keep having a couple more losing seasons and have his politics run up against his ownership group for a long time and see if there isn't. This is what we were talking about with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, I can go into any organization and find the internal struggles that any human beings have in any workplace. Popovich is much easier to stomach with political opinions that run contrary to his ownership group when they're in the finals every year.
Right.
I don't know how many years of disappointment have to happen. I will tell you, I've told you this story, right? And it's one of many like this. Pat Riley with a couple of bottles of wine going to knock on the door of Eric Spoelstra during the playoffs. And what you hear from the other side is some form of get the bleep out of here. Just family dynamics. Just all the stuff that you would have with your own father because you haven't worked anywhere else. This is the only organization and culture that you have ever known professionally. And so Riley can come up with a couple of bottles of, and you're like, I don't want to deal with Dad right now. Like, I just don't know how much of that is here right now, but I could see why it is that you would eventually get like tired or want something other than that, especially coming from somebody. I've told you this before when it comes to Pat Riley's advice. He told me, change careers every 10 years. Everything gets stale. He's saying, go try and become a doctor for 10 years. Try to become a lawyer for 10 years. He's not saying to actually do that. It's too hard. But he's saying when he looks back on his life, he wishes that he had made those kinds of changes. I've told you before, I've tried to follow that from within this realm where every 10 years it was newspapers first, it was radio second, the third 10 years was television with my dad, and now the last of it will be podcasts. It's within this realm. I'm not brave enough to flip it over every time, but in order to keep life fresh, I'll ask you guys are all young fathers. You tell me how your perspective changed on how important work was or where it is that everything changed for you, because I do think that Eric Spoelstra is at a different time in his life and that being a father makes you stop being a son.
I would say, that's a good point. I don't really talk to my dad that much anymore because I got my own family to worry about. But yeah, that's absolutely true. And as far as job is concerned, like having a job, yeah, that's very important. Having a family, I would like to have a job and
the job security of it.
And job security, which is what we all have here because we're doing our own thing. We're independent. So that's good. But Eric Spoelstra, I just don't see him going anywhere.
I feel like you guys are homers. You don't want him. Greg Cody's every opinion is going to arrive every time at that guy's not going to leave me. This is the best place for him to be.
Well, I do think this. I think Riley embraces the father role. He doesn't want to stop being the godfather of this franchise. And I thought it was very interesting after the Heat were swept by Milwaukee in the first round that Riley came right out and said Spo may have to rethink the way he uses Bam. That was an interesting comment to me because that was Riley being more than just the general manager. That was him
that pressure's always there. That pressure is there daily. Right. Riley runs that organization. Don't make any mistake about it.
Right. But here's what you don't want if you're a father, if you have a family. Like, he has job security here, Dan, right? You move to Portland 3 years, it doesn't go well. Then all of a sudden you're moving your family from place to place, and you don't want that. Like, right now he has job security here. He can stay here, I'm assuming, until at least his kids go to college.
And the Heat just made the finals last year. It's not foreseeable for at least 5 years that he would be under any job security pressure for me.
The other variable, too, is that's a harder job. If you want to spend time with young kids,
yes,
responsible for the entirety of the organization is not the job that gives you balance. Right. It's the job that takes balance away. Tonight's game, before we get out of here, Kevin Durant, across a decade, super teams. This is the most mutated form the super team has taken across this decade of that entire sport changing. It's all threes. It's all team up with your friends. The entire sport is different than it was when LeBron, Wade, and Bosh got together. And the machine has birthed this atrocity, this thing that's relentlessly interesting but filled with unlikable people. A board member for Saks Fifth Avenue, someone who thinks the earth is flat, and someone who will not stop fighting with everyone on the internet. And now two of those guys have gone down. And Stugatz, I really do, the story arc on all of this stuff. Once upon a time, Kevin Durant was the guy who quietly went to work and signed an extension in Oklahoma City as that damn evil, egomaniacal LeBron James did a television show. You did it the right way, Durant. We love you. You didn't make a super team. You did it the hard way until it got too hard, and then you did make a super team, and we turned on you too. And that team was great, and winning is hard, and they made it look easier than LeBron's team. They made it look too easy. LeBron bought himself legacy because of how hard it was. It was too easy for Kevin Durant, so he didn't get the validation. He leaves. No TV show, quietly, goes to Brooklyn. Bleep you, New York. I'm not going to the Knicks. I'm going to Brooklyn. You bring Kyrie Irving, fellow weirdo, then you trade for James Harden. All season long, we've never seen anything like this. You don't need any one of them to be in the game. You will be good. If any one of them misses, you will be one of the best teams in the league.
Correct.
Now 2 of them are out. You're playing for your life against the defensive player of the year and a team that we all acknowledge is better equipped for the playoffs than it has been.
And you're doing so with Blake Griffin.
And Joe Harris. And you've got to win a home game tonight because he's in a walking boot. Kyrie Irving's in a walking boot, and James Harden just got upgraded. This got real fast because you gave the title to them a couple of games ago, and you gave it to them a couple of months ago, and they blow out. They win by 40 against Milwaukee. And now, he looks behind him, and where are the reinforcements? This calls for, you were calling for this in game 4 when he went, whatever it was, 9 for 26.
Yeah.
This calls for a show me you're great game without a lot of help against a team that's going to be very difficult to do against, with PJ Tucker bothering you and the length of the Bucks bothering you.
But he can do it because he's that great of an offensive talent. He's that great of a basketball player, and I think that's what people are going to be glued to tonight. It's a great game. It's 2-2, right? The series is kind of on the line here.
What do you expect?
He should have like a LeBron-type game. It should be like 38 points, 15 rebounds, 10 assists. He has to put the team on his back for a night, for a single night. That's what Kevin Durant has to do. Can he do it? We'll find out. I think he can, Dan.
It's crazy that we've already reached that standard with Durant as well. He's coming off an Achilles injury, right? We just assume that Durant is Durant, but in some ways, his minutes have to be managed as well, in theory, because he's coming off a major injury that we thought was going to wreck his career.
Billy, what is this joy that has swept across your face? You just rubbed your hands together like a movie villain.
I love it. I don't know what's going on. It seems like you and Stugatz have switched roles, but it sounds like Dan is saying this is a legacy game tonight for Kevin Durant. Stugatz is saying not a big deal. It's 2-2. Anything can happen. But Dan, no, you're right. Legacy game tonight. Win it, and you're maybe a great until the next legacy game. Lose it.
You can't have a legacy game at 2-2 when there aren't actually.
You said it, not me.
Yeah, you can. You seem to say it, Dan.
I'm not saying it. All I said it was an interesting game, and you guys are so moved by that you've upgraded it to a legacy game.
Almost
I just said
must win.
All I said, it was interesting. I didn't even call it must win.
I'll tell you what, if he can get through Giannis and this Bucks team, which for the most part is healthy, if he can get through this without James Harden, without Kyrie Irving, I might be willing to give him a ring. I might be willing to give him, maybe. I'm thinking about it, pondering it.
That's incentive. That's all he needs.
Yep.
Would you consider reinstating any of the rings he won in Golden State?
No, no. He never gets those.
No.
Maybe, possibly, I'm considering. This is the incentive, the bulletin board material.
Big game.
You are giving Kevin Durant, as if the pressure weren't high enough on him today. Stugatz is maybe kind of sort of considering possibly giving him a ring in a personal record book that he will never actually write because he's too lazy.
Correct.
Okay. You've been called out, Durant.